as Chief Marketing and Customer Officer for a real estate software assets based out of Sweden, but we operate across a number of geographies, including the UK, the US, and Australia, and New Zealand. I'm particularly passionate about the topic of mental health among men. First of all, because I've been somebody who's benefited from the interventions that the good doctor described, but more broadly, because I do really see the implications of inaction and the kind of social crisis that creates among our brothers, our fathers, our grandfathers, our uncles, etc. And so I'm really kind of honored to be joining you guys here this evening for this discussion, as well as to kind of drive the agenda forward.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Munya. And yeah, let's get right into it. But sorry, before we get into it, sorry, I must say, and I must commend First Capital Bank for some of the work they're doing around mental health. We've had quite a few of these discussions in the past, but it'll be good to know that this month, the team at First Capital Bank actually decided that they were not going to shave. I don't know if it's all of them that decided not to shave, but they did join in this year and you know, do their bit for the Movember movement. The Movember movement being a movement that pretty much focuses on men's health. Not only the mental health aspect, but also, you know, suicide prevention, and also, you know, trying to direct focus on certain conditions that affect men, such as testicular cancer, you know, prostate cancer and the likes. Right, and I'd really want to commend the team at First Capital Bank for actually showing that, you know, as a team in the workplace, people can work together and actually spread as much awareness around mental health. All right, so getting right into it, you know, the stats are out there for everyone to see, and it shows that pretty much men are twice as likely to you know, to get into situations like where they now abuse substances and drugs and all that stuff, sorry, compared to women. So Dr. Justice, this is coming to you. I want to zero in on that aspect, because I think substance abuse and drug abuse has actually been in the papers and in the news for quite a while now. How is this indicative of the struggles men are going through, you know, the issues that are being pointed out of substance abuse, drug abuse, and all that? Is there a link, you think?
Well, thank you, Tino, for that question. So from what we seem to be picking up, when men, you know, are stressed and they, you know, are finding life, you know, becoming tough, they seem to be resorting to drugs, because there is a myth that you know, for example, alcohol, it will you know, take off some of the pressure, and so initially, as people indulge in substances, they have some relief of some sort, not knowing that the end result is actually, you know, people digging their own grave. So it is it's something that has been observed. So the people start kind of feeling some good side of taking substances, but eventually, as they take more of substances, then they end up compromising their mental health. So yes, it's true. There is a relationship between substance abuse and mental health issues.
Thank you for that, Doctor. And I'm sure there's men out there who are saying exactly what you just said, where they say maybe by having a bit of whiskey or by having a bit of a few beers here and there and throwing in some shots of tequila or something, then I start to feel better, you know, and I'm more confident and things seem to flow. What would you say to men who would think that way? Is this the right way to do things, or like you're saying, is it definitely adversely affecting our mental health?
Yeah, so reality is this. So what happens is, if you are under pressure, there is need for you to release that pressure. And so substance abuse is, I call it just a temporal relief. But eventually you get hooked on something that is worse than, the problem that you had initially. So you actually become worse, whilst initially it appears as if, things are becoming better for you. It's always the case. Most of the substances, that's what happens. You appear as if you're becoming, better initially, but you're actually killing yourself. And let me just add and say that by the time you realize that this is actually not good for you, you probably are at a point of no return. I just want to say to people out there, you hear this, prevention. That's why I'm very happy that we're having this discussion here. Prevention when it comes to substance and that drug abuse, let me tell you, it's much better than cure. It's very difficult to cure, somebody who has started, self-destruction, with substance abuse. Very difficult.
Oh, thank you for that, Doc. And I hope my brothers out there are realizing that, this thing that we feel is a quick fix is not actually a quick fix. Actually, it will affect us as we go. And in the future, there's likely to be a lot of other effects on us, not just our mental health, but also health-wise, physical health. There are issues that can come up because of this. Thank you so much for that, Doctor. And Farai, I'd want to come to you. You are in charge of a big team, I think, and there's a lot of work that's done, obviously with First Capital Bank. We see a lot of the campaigns that you have and a lot of the things that you're doing out there. And I want to just find out, in terms of the workspace and mental health, how has First Capital brought in this conversation to show that the organization itself actually cares about you and your team as well? What are some of the things that you guys have done, and what are some of the things that you feel other organizations out there can start to pick up on and do in terms of, in order to help the different guys out there within your organization, and ladies, of course?
Yeah. Thanks, Tino. I would like to think First Capital has done very well in dedicating the month of November, not only to the issues that you spoke about earlier on regarding men's health, regarding cancers and other dread diseases that we suffer from. There's also been a conscious effort by First Capital Bank to focus on men, which I always complain to my wife that it seems that women have 10 plus 20, half a dozen days every year dedicated to them, and there's almost nothing dedicated to men. So I would like to thank First Capital for being one of the first employers that I've come across that actually give time and focus on the man. I was very impressed last week when I had a few colleagues coming to me, and my remarks to them was, do I look troubled? And the message then from First Capital was, please talk to your male colleague, ask them how they're doing. Just take that conscious, make that conscious effort to go and ask a male colleague, how are you doing? How are you managing life? What are you doing well? How can we improve your well-being? I think that conscious effort just to go and check up on your fellow colleague. We work in very stressful environments, and there's a lot of, we need to manage those stress levels. I think Doc can testify. And for First Capital Bank, there's this emphasis: work hard, play hard, and take a break, go and rest, and come back recharged. So I think what I think other employers can learn from First Capital is, one, dedicating that time to actually appreciating the men that work under them, and maybe encouraging men to check up on each other, and also asking those men to take a break and recharge their batteries. Yeah.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Thank you for that, Farai. But still on that aspect of organizations and really trying to help men in terms of their mental health. I just want to zero in on another aspect because I know First Capital Bank did a survey on Twitter where they just wanted to get a feel of, it's a common thing that we say men don't talk, and well, I'm glad all four of us are actually talking and we're showing that this might be a myth, but it's true. And I just want to zero in on that, with the different work that you guys have done, with the different campaigns that you had as well. Would you say men actually choose not to talk? And before I give the results of that survey, I just want to find out from you, do you believe that this is true, that we choose not to talk? And why would you believe that this is so?
I believe it is true. Unfortunately, we have all been taught, or we have all adopted a very macho attitude or outlook towards life. And we internalize, as men, we just have learned to internalize our issues. We have learned to not share because we're afraid that if I share my issues, the next person is going to laugh at me. They don't think it's manly enough for you to share, to actually have problems. Having problems, I think, seen as a weakness. So yeah, we unfortunately as men, we are internalizing issues. We're not talking, we are not sharing, and we think we can carry or we can solve whatever issues that we are facing to our detriment, unfortunately.
All right, great. So the results of that particular
sorry, Tino.
Yes, you go ahead, Doc.
Can I just add something? Because I think this is a very powerful question that you're asking here. And I want to give you an example, and I'll use my own example why I'm in mental health space is when I was 21, I became suicidal for 2 years. And I actually wanted to kill myself. What was interesting is that I was working with a group of about maybe 40 to 50 men, suicidal for 2 years. None of the men knew I wanted to kill myself. And I normally say to people when I run workshops, seminars, and the like, I normally say to people, the way we have been raised as men is such that, amongst us as well, listening to this workshop and the like, one of us might actually want to be taking, their own lives. Hear this, they would actually prefer to take their own life than to share. So that's how serious, the background we're coming from. And unfortunately, people sometimes end up actually committing suicide. So it's a reality. I thought I should just add that, just using my own personal example.
Wow. Sorry, I had to take a pause there. Doc, we really appreciate that you were able to share this aspect of your life with us, because I know it's not easy for a lot of men to share something like that about themselves. And we really commend you. We really thank you for being brave enough to share such a part of your life. And I really hope those who are tuned in and those who are listening can realize that, like we mentioned earlier on, the first safe space we need is us. And we should be able to share some of these parts of our lives that we find difficult to bring out. But we really commend you and thank you for that, Doc. It's really appreciated. I want to move to you, Munya, now. I want to speak around the issue of, community-based initiatives and things that we try to do as a community to help as many men out there. You're overseas, and I know there's a lot more work done around this. And I just want to tap into your experience, tap into your knowledge. You mentioned earlier on that you have actually benefited from some of the different interventions out there as well. So I just wanted to tap into that experience of yours and just find out what are some of the community initiators that you have come across over there. And maybe if you could share a bit on the impact they've had on you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you to my fellow kind of panelists who've shared so far. I just want to double click on something that the doctor said just now around, kind of suicide survivors and that experience. I was reading into an academic study that was published by the Medical University of Vienna, and they were looking at male suicide survivors between the ages of 18 and 67, and the family and friends of those guys. And this is what they concluded, which I think is, astonishing, that almost all men reported that their masculine beliefs led them to isolating themselves when they were feeling down to avoid imposing on others, and instead relied on coping strategies that required less immediate effort and provided short-term alleviation of problems, for example, drug or alcohol abuse, gambling, or working excessively. But perhaps most worryingly, I think, was that some men reported that the adherence to masculine norms meant that feelings associated with being vulnerable provoke greater anxiety than the thought of being dead. So if you can imagine that the thought of taking one's own life was less stressful as an idea than looking vulnerable in front of your family, in front of your colleagues at work, in front of your social circle. And that's really the kind of intensity that can build up when you are, for example, suffering from an economic hardship, you've lost your job and the bills are piling up, a crisis of midlife, a relationship breakdown, just identity issues across a whole spectrum of areas. Those things, and they're starting to kind of mount up, can actually mean that the pressure of admitting that you're struggling in that sense can feel more intense than, at least worse than the idea of just taking one's own life. And this is just an academic study that concluded these things. So just to kind of, show how severe that challenge is, and actually it feels irrational if you're not in that situation, but in that situation, that's actually the path of least resistance for many people. My own journey is, I've been seeing a therapist for years, just as kind of like a rule of thumb. But initially, it was forced upon me because I started out in the high-tech software space, and we were raising a bunch of venture capital. And in order to do that, the investors insisted that these guys are too young to kind of carry this responsibility on their own. So they must have some kind of psychological assessment before we kind of set them on a journey that's going to ruin their lives. And thank God for that. And so, for as long as I've been able to remember now, I've had somebody that I can go to, that I meet on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, and just talk about how things are going. And that's been really helpful for me. However, I started to have kind of really, really close friends and relatives that actually didn't make it past the kind of only thought of suicide. They actually went through with it. And it provoked me into action, both on a personal level. I've been fundraising for a charity called Calm, which is the campaign against living miserably, which supports only men, to try and raise awareness around the idea that, it is good to talk, and the fact that when people reach that kind of valley of despair, it's very difficult to dig them out, as Doc said. So we need more money going into awareness initiatives. We need more money going into intervention support as well, making more counselors available, and so on. So every year I do a couple of half marathons where I get my bib on, do a bit of training, and I go out there. And the goal is not actually to run the fastest half marathon, but the goal is to finish, because that's always the challenge, I think, among men, is to take that next step until you cross that finish line in a good way. And the whole theme of the work that I do there is simply to encourage people to take a next step, take the next, low-hanging fruit in terms of a conversation or reaching out. And that's proven to be something that's helped a number of people and also kept me kind of engaged with the mission. Speaking more specifically about our challenge as particularly actually African men in the UK, Zimbabwean specifically, when the first lockdown happened, I think we were so isolated that it was just genuinely hard to understand what was happening to the lads. And eventually you started to see kind of them gather around watering holes on Zoom. I remember there would be a Thursday night or whatever, everybody would bring their favorite beverage, and we'd sit there sometimes for 5 or 6 hours just to have somewhere to go, because you couldn't go to the pub, you couldn't kind of go out and kick a football or whatever. But that gave myself and a few friends some idea and some impetus around, we should do something about creating an environment where lads can actually go and talk. And we formed the Comrades Golf Society, because golf was one of the few sports that was still allowed, because you cannot go for a long walk, and it's out in the open, and it's quite socially distanced most of the time, and that went from being 4 people having an idea around golf to now being a 50-person strong golf society here in the UK that's focused on giving guys a place to go where they can hang around other people. And we actively talk about mental health and safety being the key thrust and the driver of why we formed that society in the first place. And it's made a massive difference in the lives of our members. So that's just to give you a kind of a snapshot and a taste of, personally, I've benefited, but also societally, we're creating circles and watering holes for lads to be able to go somewhere and actually get out of the house, exercise, talk to some people that might be in a similar season of life, and actually get out of this mental prison that makes you feel like you're the only one going through a struggle or a challenge.
Oh, yeah, sounds really exciting, and I hope our viewers and our listeners can also tap into some of these ideas, and use, because as men, we do enjoy our sports, we do enjoy our beers, and, those are some of the things we can use to actually then shift different conversations. I was laughing the other day with the gentleman that I was speaking to, where, one of the most common things growing up that you'd hear is a guy bragging about, I left the club and I was so high, or I was so drunk, and then I managed to drive home and I get there. We brag about such things, but how dangerous is that, But it's something we really brag about. So I think, like you're saying, it's important to shift the conversations that we have and use the tools that we already have. We've got sports, we've got, the different beer halls or pubs that we can go to and actually have some good conversations around this. So we really appreciate your input and the work you're doing, and you've touched on that issue where you speak about raising funds around mental health and all that. And I just want to find out as well, because this is an issue that I think we need as much assistance on, or we need as much help on, right? So I'll start with you, Munya, and then I also want to hear the view of the corporate side of things from Farai, to hear, how willing are individuals now to invest in mental health, when we speak. And then also we want to hear how willing are corporates as well to invest in mental health, because I know it starts with spreading awareness and all that, but we also just want to touch on, when someone comes to me and says, look, not necessarily donate, but even just spending a bit of money on myself when it comes to mental health, how willing am I to do that? So from your experience, I just want to touch on that to see how willing are people to invest in mental health.
I think it's a really, really good question. And I think the answer is actually surprisingly resounding. I think people are very willing to engage with the subject. But what I think has been perhaps not as effective in the past are the kind of stories that we share with respect to mental health illness and the impacts that those are having on family and relationships and in the work environment. So for example, if you just simply put out a banner that says we need to fundraise for mental health and full stop, you haven't really provoked any emotion there. You haven't engaged on the lived experiences of the people that can actually open their wallets and make a contribution. But if you talk about experiencing a father who's an alcoholic, and the impact that that's had on the family, or being in an environment where that led to maybe domestic violence in the household and children, having a general fear of Baba around the house, that kind of thing really provokes a different kind of emotional response that actually unlocks resources to be made available. You could talk about people that have been, that have struggled financially, and either because of unemployment, lack of opportunity, being made redundant, losing their job during the pandemic. Once you start to make it relatable to people's lived experiences and real stories, you actually see other people kind of come out of the woodwork, come out of the shadows and say, you know what, that's my story, or that's my dad's story, or that's my brother's story, or that's my sister's story. And then funding that or contributing to that becomes almost the easy way out, because you instinctively you want to do more than just give money. When you hear a story that's very relatable, you want to put your hand to the plow and invest in beyond your money, and also in many cases give your time. That's why you start to see people kind of put on a t-shirt and say, in addition to the $20, I'm going to run for this cause because I lost my dad to alcoholism, or I lost my uncle to a motor vehicle accident, to drink driving, whatever, or I lost my cousin to suicide. In those situations, if you describe those stories effectively enough, you mobilize people around a cause that they genuinely can buy into and believe in emotionally, and it also gives those programs longevity and higher impact, I believe.
Oh, fantastic! Thank you for pointing that out. Because I think this is such valuable input that I think a lot of us need to hear, because especially the issue around lived experiences, because when people talk about what they've gone through, like, for example, when the good doctor mentioned his experience with suicide, I know for a fact this touched a lot of people. And the hope is that it brings a lot of people out to share these stories. And like you're saying, it makes mental health become more relatable, and it makes us realize that each and every one of us actually needs to invest in mental health, not just in terms of money, but also in terms of our time, and spreading as much awareness around it. Farai, coming to you, still on this particular question, but I just want to tap on, the corporate side of things, that the activities that the First Capital Bank embarks on around mental health, is this an indication of corporates taking a direction towards actually investing more in this particular matter?
Yeah. Thanks, Tino. I think the issue of mental health is one which corporates cannot afford to ignore, or cannot afford to sweep under the carpet. Unfortunately or fortunately, First Capital Bank is in the service industry. The service industry where our staff are front-facing, they face the customers. So their well-being, mental well-being, is of paramount importance to First Capital Bank, where we need to make sure that they are well, that they are in the right space. They can only serve customers or provide an outstanding service or value or serve our value proposition in delivering it to our customers if their health is well taken care of. We note that sometimes when there's a lot of when mental health starts growing or starts manifesting itself in the male or staff of a particular company, we start experiencing things like absenteeism. We start seeing productivity drop. I always laugh at my cousin. He unfortunately works next door in SA, where he indicates to me, or he actually tells me, that every Monday, the number of people that come to work are way half the workforce comes to work. And it's for me, it's a symptom of a deeper problem, where we have a population running away from their problems. And like the doctor said, burying their troubles or trying to find a temporary solution for their problems in drink and in other vices. For First Capital Bank, we place paramount importance on mental health of our staff, especially the men, because like the doctor said, we are at more, or we suffer more, so to speak. Productivity for us is very important, so I'll stop there, unfortunately.
All right, no, that's all right. Thanks a lot for that, Farai. And I really hope a lot of organizations are also following suit, because this is a good initiative that actually shows that there is that shift, and the hope is that a lot more people jump on board, and a lot more people spread as much awareness around mental health. And Doctor, coming to you, and zeroing in on, we've heard from Munya, and how him and his friends have come up with so many activities. We've heard from Farai about how their organization is actually embarking on quite a few activities as well around this. Doctor, I just want to focus now on mostly on what they've said as well, but also now coming down to us as men, you know. You see, with us as men, there's one side you're going to get. It's either you're going to get a panel as good as this of individuals who are going to be willing to listen. And then I heard someone saying you'll also get on the flip side a group of men who will use your story as ammunition against you, right? And this shows that as men, we can either be positive for each other, or we can be the total opposite for each other. Mm-hmm. Looking at the different activities that the gentlemen have spoken, and zeroing in on men as well, this conversation around mental health, how best do we package it? How best do we present it so that we do not have this flip side where we are also using our stories as ammunition against each other?
Mm. Well, thank you, Tino, for that. And I like Munya's angle. I thought that was very powerful. To say that, you know, one of the things that we need to do is to actually talk about lived experiences. And I think that's very powerful. It will help us a lot. In addition to that, I think for me, one of the things that, you know, I'm talking about these days is to say that, you know, let's remove ignorance from men when it comes to, you know, mental health issues. And perhaps one way of making sure that ignorance is removed is to focus on, you know, prevention, you know, dealing with prevention issues. I'll give you a story. So a person walking alongside a river, this is a story that I picked up from one book I was reading at some point in time. So a person walking alongside the river sees someone drowning in it. So the passerby jumps in, pulls the victim out, and begins artificial respiration. While the reviving process is taking place, another person in the river calls for help. The rescuer jumps into the water again, pulls the second victim out, and administers artificial respiration. This process repeats itself until the rescuer, on hearing the voice of yet another victim from the river, gets up and begins walking away. Wow. By now, the rescuer has drawn a small crowd. The bystanders ask in surprise where the rescuer is going. He was doing a fantastic job rescuing, so they ask in surprise. The rescuer says, or replies, "You save that one, and whoever else comes floating down the river. I am going upstream to find out who is pushing all these people in and see if I can do something to stop it." Wow. So I heard, when I heard this story, I looked at the moral of it. I thought it was powerful. That one of the things that is actually very much necessary. That's why I really appreciate what First Capital Bank has done to say, hey, let's talk about these things. Hear this in the hope that we will focus more on prevention. Because here, this prevention is actually much cheaper than when it comes to the actual cure. The distraction that takes place because of you know, mental health issues, in terms of broken relationships, in terms of poor parenting, in terms of you know, loss of productivity and the like, let me tell you, it's very expensive. Even when somebody now is suffering from mental health issues, the cost of it, for example, someone who is now on drug, you know, and substance abuse, to just go for treatment here in Zimbabwe, it's costly. And there may not be any guarantee that you'll be able to, go back to your original state. So what can we do as men? My take is, let's talk more around prevention and use lived experiences, like what Munya said. Let's organize more of these discussions. And yeah, this actually begin to be honest with one another as men, to say that reality is we can get overwhelmed as men. Because sometimes you hear this, what I've discovered is sometimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. You know, I do talk to a lot of people. I counsel a lot of people, do pastoral counseling and the like. When I look at the Facebook profiles of people who are just coming out of my counseling group, let me tell you, there is a mismatch. So I want you to know that the pressure that we put ourselves under, thinking that others are actually doing very well, you will be shocked that all those photos that are posted on Facebook and the like, they are just meant to, appease a certain crowd, but in reality, it may not be what is happening. So we need to actually acknowledge reality, to say we can all, come under pressure at some point in time. And yet this, instead of actually then allowing that pressure to make us, abuse substance and, making us to sink further in mental health issues, reality is we can acknowledge mental health is an issue. Because mental health issues, sometimes they're just temporary. You're under a lot of pressure and you can't handle it for that moment. And you may need to just go and talk to somebody so that they will be able to help you. And you will recover. Just like anyone can be ill physically, anyone can be ill mentally or psychologically. That's why you will notice that when it comes to health, according to WHO, health is not just the absence of disease, but it is the presence of all the elements of health, which is physical, emotional, behavioral, mentally, and spiritual. That's the definition of health. Most of us, unfortunately, when we talk about, going to for medical checkups and like, just go for physical, checkups. Very few people have make a conscious decision to say, hey, maybe let me go and just talk to a psychologist, let me go and talk to a counselor as part of my, health checkup. That's why I really appreciate what Munya was saying. His organization proactively said, you know what, you're a young man, and we know that you can actually, this kind of work can take a toll on you, and you have somebody to talk to. That's wisdom, because that's all about prevention. And so we can start from that perspective of acknowledging reality and focus on prevention, and encourage us as men to be honest that we will have things that come and they can actually overwhelm us. I know I'm just saying this, me, I'm the weak one. When I see you, the panelists here, you guys are strong, you will never be overwhelmed. You don't look like somebody who will go overwhelmed. So I'm just talking to myself here. Is that what you know?
Not at all, Doctor, not at all. Thank you for this, and I could actually, testify to that. The need for prevention is actually way than waiting for the situation to be terrible. Actually, why I say I can testify to that, because I've also been diagnosed with a mental health condition, and it's something I've lived with for a long time, and it's something that I'm more than willing to share with people about. And I've seen that the more I share, the more I'm able to really touch a lot of people's lives and get them to also open up on what they are going through as well. But Doctor, as you were speaking, something also crossed my mind with regards to, I believe the panel is all Zimbabwean men, African men, and all that. And we're really encouraging men to talk and all that. And I just want to whip this in and throw in the cultural aspect of things. And I'm glad I've got we've got Munya here today, who's overseas, and he's experienced life as a Zimbabwean or African man in a different continent altogether. And we've got Farai as well here, who's here at home and probably has had his different experiences as well. So I just want to hear your different views, Munya and Farai, when it comes to culture and how it can affect us in terms of opening up and talking about our experiences around mental health. Do you feel the culture affects us somewhere, somehow, in terms of making this, an easy topic to have as men? I'll start with you, Munya, and then Farai, we'll go to Farai.
Yeah, I think, and thank you for the question. I think culture has a profound, impact on mental health perspectives, because culturally, if you just kind of go back in time, let's say 1 or 2 generations, men only have like 2 emotions, either they are angry or they are happy. There's nothing else between that spectrum, right? So everything that's related to stress, anxiety, fear, frustration of any kind, disappointment, you name it, is all bundled into this one category called anger, and anger has like one way to address it. Any other way is kind of considered a bit weak and something that probably, traditionally, because of patriarchy and the way that it's structured, is kind of an effeminate emotion and a strong sign of weakness, at least among the peers or padari, or whatever the case might be. So what you find, I think, is that upbringing has a huge impact on one's kind of understanding of masculinity, but also one's coordinates in terms of the role that you start to play, even subconsciously as a man. You start to shun anything that you don't understand emotionally. Like I said, the other broad range of emotion, rejection, anxiety, fear, all of those things are just bundled into, I feel angry all the time. And because it never gets processed, that's just something that compounds. And because that pressure, as Doc was saying, builds up, you then find those unhealthy outlets that just lead you to substance abuse or some other kind of overindulgence, at least, that has self-destructive kind of externalities. So I do absolutely believe that there's a challenge there. And the other thing that I think shaped masculinity, at least from a Zim perspective, is the role of fathers, going back 1 or 2 generations even. I think if I generalize for a moment, the rural to urban migration that happened kind of, immediately post-independence and thereafter meant that dads lived away from home and mom raised all the kids. And then that created a separation of a relationship between perhaps our fathers or their fathers before and their fathers. And the guy was a provider and the guy was a money machine, an ATM. And that's the fundamental role that those men were told they had to play in the family. And as long as there was provision from a fiscal perspective, all of the other things that boys need from fathers and that men need from each other were discounted to zero. So the mentoring, the support, the coaching, the love, the advice, the kind of just the investment man to man that you need in order to be a wholesome and holistic person, that was kind of put to the side in exchange for just providing school fees and providing, shelter and clothing. Then enter the next generation that actually see that, wait, other people have an actual relationship with their dads. They spend time together. They enjoy each other's company. They can talk about any topic, without any kind of weirdness going on. And then you find yourself somewhere within that space where, I don't have that, but I crave that. And you try to reach out, and then that's rebuffed or rejected as being a weak thing that you do. And that has, for a lot of friends that I have, been a real challenge, just the inability to have a human relationship with their biological father, simply because the dad rejects anything that isn't, about provision or shelter or clothing, because that's stuff that we don't talk about as men. We kind of leave that to the women to address. And we have to break that somehow. You have to ask yourself, what kind of father do I want to be? What kind of partner do I want to be? But more importantly, if, let's say there are loads of people that are tuning in that are unmarried or that just belong to a circle of brothers, what kind of friend am I? Because what we need to talk again to support Doc's idea of prevention versus kind of intervention, if we are going to survive the pandemic or the epidemic of mental health illness among men, we all have to become each other's brother's keeper. And that's about being completely honest and also being willing to be vulnerable about certain things that our culture and our heritage hasn't always created room or space for to be able to talk about. I'll give you a very clear example. I had a friend who clearly his issue was he was living well beyond his means, to try and kind of keep up with the circle, if that makes sense. And while keeping up with the circle gave him a sense of, yeah, I belong, I'm also a man, I get to kind of have this credibility that other people also have. The reality was it was creating a crisis in his personal life where he was digging himself deeper and deeper into debt. There were certain friends he couldn't speak to anymore because he was borrowed to his eyeballs. He wasn't sleeping very well, then wasn't performing well at work, then was now at risk of losing that job. And then fundamentally, the discussion had to be, bro, do you need some money? And I'm willing to give you this money if you go and see a financial specialist that's going to restructure your books and put you on a plan that you stick to in order for you to actually get out of the hole that you've been digging for a long time. And that was really what it took in terms of being my brother's keeper and being a good friend. And I think we have to redefine, what does it mean to be my brother's keeper? What does it mean to be a good friend? It's not just about indulging their kind of impulses. It's not just about another pint. It's not just about another glass of whiskey. It is actually sometimes about, you need to go home now. You need to stop spending on that. Your car is too expensive for you. You need to downsize and move into an apartment you can afford, because all of those things, when they go unaddressed, are adding loads and loads of stress on the shoulders of people and creating and exacerbating this mental health crisis that we have. And then you have the effect that they can't talk to dad, they can't talk to uncle, they can't even talk to their friends. So then all of a sudden, they're just stuck in this mental prison where the only person that they can go to is to themselves. And then the voice inside is telling it, just end it, end it tomorrow. It's the easy way out. So long story, long answer short, there is a profound impact of culture on our perspective of masculinity and manhood, and it fundamentally needs to change.
I love the fact that, you brought in the broader aspect of culture, because when someone thinks of culture, someone is just probably thinking about a guy dressed in Ndebele, they call it a bechu, and holding a spear, and all that. But, there's so much to it. There's our relationships with our parents, there's our relationships with our friends. There's also the financial culture. What has our culture taught us in terms of money and different things like that. And I love the fact that you brought about that broad element to it. And it's really, sparked a lot in my mind, and there's a lot of conversations that I think people need to have around this as well. So coming to you, Farai, still on this particular question around culture, do you have any particular maybe experiences that you can share where maybe culture has been evident to really affect mental health, especially for men?
Not exactly experiences, but maybe perspectives. I would like to send us back to the whole, or like us as men or as a community, to start considering this whole aspect of Ubuntu. I am because you are. I think if we go back into our culture, we also have this aspect that it takes a village to raise a man or to raise a child. That village is no longer there. We have all moved to the cities. The traditional aunts, the traditional dari, the traditional even those gatherings that we used to have when we used to dance under the moon and sit around, tell stories, the grandma telling stories, those are not there. Those are some of the aspects that built us up, that ingrained some aspects about responsibility, what we should be, where we should be, and what we should actually value in life. So that is not there. Instead, we are now faced, my wife always tells me that take things slow, smell the roses. Life, unfortunately, we have now considering life as a rat race. It's a very fast-paced race where everyone is trying to run and outdo the other. The problem with that rat race is that, unfortunately, you get to the end of the line and you haven't seen any of the sights. For me, life is a journey. Take it slowly. Enjoy the sights, smell the roses as you're going along that journey, and you'll enjoy it a lot more than what we are currently doing right now. We unfortunately are in a society now where we have moved from that traditional basin or that traditional, what do I call it? That traditional foundation that we had. And we're now in this very fast-paced race where the people that we are looking up to are not necessarily that father who has taken his kids through school, that father who loves his wife, that father who has built shelter, and that father who is keeping his family as a unit and keeping them well. And instead, we're looking up to these guys driving these German cars, and we're not really looking at what's behind that whole facade that these people are putting up to the public. So for me, the culture has changed, but as men, my feeling is that we need to start giving credence to those things that matter. We need to start going back to the basics and start molding our heads around what do we put or what do we consider as important. Yeah, I think that's my, yeah.
All right, great. Thank you so much for that, Farai. I think, yeah, we really need to pick out the good within our culture. Like you're saying, there's so many beautiful elements that that we can pick out from, you know, and there's been some questions coming in from our viewers and our guests. So one of the questions that has come in, but I'm seeing the time is really gone. So we have a question that says, how do you balance between being vulnerable and showing weakness? As men, sometimes ego gets the better of us, and we would naturally want to show that we are in control without showing any signs of weakness. The good doctor, I think, if you could give us an answer to this, and yeah, and maybe help.
Well, thank you. That's a brilliant question. To me, just maybe because of time, I'll just answer it as follows. It's better for you, you know, to show weakness than to die. That's all I can say. Reality is here. This when you are at the point of weakness, to the extent that you are actually dying, you would rather be, you know, be vulnerable and show that weakness. It's pointless for you to appear to be strong whilst you are actually, you know, killing yourself. Because in the end, here, this, what I've discovered as I've worked with people, we all know ourselves. When you are weak, you are still weak even if you are hiding it. So I normally say to people, truth will always stand in its own strength, even if you're hiding it. So when you're weak and you're hiding it and it's killing you, yeah, this, you are not doing anything. So that's maybe the quick short answer there.
Thank you so much for that, Doc. And yeah, that is a powerful, quick, short answer. And I really hope our viewer really picked out something from that. So before I ask each of you guys to give us your closing statements, you know, I'd like to acknowledge that we have now entered into the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. And a lot of the discussions now are around how we can also speak to the men, because we're often viewed as the perpetrators and all that. So it's about time we speak to boys, we speak to men about this serious issue of gender-based violence and how it ultimately affects everyone's mental health and physical health as well. So I just wanted to add that note and remind all men out there, you know, that it's important that we have these very serious and important discussions around such issues as gender-based violence, because you will find that some of these things are caused by past experiences, and then this actually relates to our mental health as well. So as we're in the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, I'd like to encourage all men to actively participate, you know, and have different discussions so that we can change the narrative. You know, yeah. And so in closing, I'd like to close this differently. We just have a minute. So maybe just 15 seconds to each of you. If you could just throw in a bit of advice to the next generation around mental health. So this is us speaking to the boys that are coming up. So we'll start with Farai, then Doc Justice, and then Munya. Just give a bit of advice to the next generation of guys coming up.
For me, it's let's appreciate each other. Look at your fellow man, talk to him, If he has done well, or if he's doing well, or if he's trying to do well, appreciate him, encourage him. To my fellow men out there who are struggling with mental issues or with what to do with their lives, let's start productive hobbies. Let's try and move away from the pub every weekend. Let's start a little farming operation. Start raise chickens. Take up fishing. Do one of those things. Go play soccer with your friends, with your kids. Let them enjoy your time. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. For me, I can just say to everyone, every man here, being vulnerable is not a sign of weakness. Seek help. Thank you.
Yeah, and here, I will just say, it's good to talk, and, you are your brother's keeper. And, somebody out there needs that reach out and that hand of encouragement and support. So don't hesitate to be the one to ask the awkward question. Do you need money? Have you made your rent? Do you need to go home now? Have you had too much to drink? There's loads of questions that are so easy to just pull out of the bag at the right time that may actually end up saving somebody's life.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for this. It's been an incredible discussion, and it's been wonderful tapping into each and every one of you's knowledge and experiences as well. And we really hope that a lot of men have picked up quite a bit from this show today. And we really hope to have more of these discussions and to try and help as many men out there who are dealing with different issues. So we really appreciate this. And yeah, let's hope First Capital will have us in and have a whole lot more of these discussions and conversations. And Doc, thank you once again for being brave enough to share your story. Munya, you've been wonderful. Farai, thank you so much. It's been great. So to all our viewers, we will have the information for our different guests distributed to you, and yeah, you can always get in touch with them and tap a little bit more into their knowledge as well. But thank you so much for tuning in. We look forward to hearing some more from you.
Thank you very much.